Hello everyone, it's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and we're almost there. I'm going to say it every last episode until we are done. We're almost done this road through all of John Ford's filmography, and here with me for probably like the 40th something time on this particular journey is my wife, Jess. Jess, thank you so much for coming on and talking what should be your last John Ford film.
I'll believe it when I see it, Shane.
There we go. She'll believe it once we start Wes Anderson. But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments on Welcome to the Wasteland. We have Coming Attractions, which will be for November 22nd, 2024. And then we'll get into our feature film 2, Road Together. And then we have some recommendations for you. So this is a big weekend with Gladiator coming out, which is I think the closest I've gotten to accepting one of these weird names for Gladiator II and Wicked. Glickid.
Okay.
Somebody specifically
Sure.
put Glickid 2 so that you can incorporate the Roman numerals.
Wicked 2 Part 1, because isn't Wicked separated into...
I don't... Well,
parts?
we'll have to see once... I will believe it once the movie's actually over and doesn't have an ending. But let's get into our coming attractions, which... There's quite a few big streaming releases, whether it's Blitz coming to Apple TV+, or Spellbound coming to Netflix. But really when it comes down to it, we have 2 big movies coming out this weekend. And Jess, why are you most excited for Gladiator 2?
I like big ship fight. I like big men fight. The end. That's it.
And we're guaranteed a lot of that in this 2.5-hour epic film from Ridley Scott, which... Am I disappointed we're not getting the original sequel where Maximus fights the gods in the afterlife and that's just literally the plot of Gods of War? But, we're not getting that one. But this does look pretty exciting. I've heard generally good positive things.
There's no Denzel Washington kissing a man, which released the Denzel kissing a man cut.
That will be in the inevitable director's cut.
He committed.
Because literally every film that Ridley Scott does has a director's cut. Because he just films way too much shit.
He's such a grumpy old guy.
Yep. So we will get to see that eventually. But I am excited about this cast with, the likes of Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal and Paul Mescal, which I'll be interested to see how well he sells this. Based off of what I've seen Paul Mescal do, he's a great actor. It's just, I don't know if he has the kind of, presence, that Russell Crowe has.
Mm-hmm. He's an actual Spaniard, right?
Mescal?
Mm-hmm.
He is extremely Irish.
Oh. Never mind.
Yes.
Oops.
He is a very Irishman.
Look, the Romans went everywhere.
So Ridley Scott apparently cast him specifically because he looks like a younger Richard Harris who played his grandfather, Marcus Aurelius.
Okay.
So,
sure.
British people. But no, it's epic in scale. And this would have been easily Gladiator 2 if it weren't for, very recently, I've just been really getting on the hype train for Wicked. I'm actually pretty darn excited for Wicked, despite the fact that Jess let me down easy that I'll probably see 5-10 minutes of Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. I don't remember the wizard being in it very much.
I want his outfit anyway. But I've just heard amazing things about this nonstop. Every early reaction that I've heard that this is coming for all the Oscars, and I'm like...
They truly are defying gravity.
We're going to see Wicked versus Dune Part 2 battle for the Academy Awards.
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
You just want to watch people fight, let's be honest.
There you go. Jess is all hyped for that right now. But those are our coming attractions, which these are 2 huge films coming out for the same weekend, especially when the rest of November was kind of...
Oops, all holidays.
Oops, all Venom. just taken every weekend so far. Except apparently it is going to lose this weekend to Red One, but Red One's still going to flop hard. Nobody's surprised. But let's get into our feature film of the week, which is Two Rode Together. This is a 1961 Western drama. A corrupt marshal is pressured by his army friend into negotiating the release of white captives of the Comanches, but finds that their reintegration into society has its consequences. So, this is some fun backstory because this is some drama.
More than the movie had.
So, this is starring Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart.
Shirley Jones is in it. Based on the 1959 novel Comanche Captives.
Damn, they had a really quick turnaround back then.
All of them.
True Grit, yeah, I was surprised. I thought True Grit was like an ancient
story. Books that John Ford adapted were like a year or two old.
Dang.
Basically. From writer Will Cook. Written by Frank Nugent, who wrote so many of John Ford's films. John Ford directed this as a favor to Columbia Pictures head Harry Cohn, who just passed away. He was paid $225,000 plus 25% of net profits.
That's got to be a lot in today's dollars.
Mm-hmm. Ford said it was the worst piece of crap I've done in 20 years. He felt like he hated the source material and thought it was a horribly worse version of what he did with The Searchers.
I don't disagree.
But he did it anyway.
Yeah.
This was shot on the Alamo Village. So the set that they made to film John Wayne's The Alamo.
Oh, I thought it was like, for some reason I was picturing like Biltmore Village where it's a bunch of shops outside of Biltmore Estate.
No, so like this was shot on the set of The Alamo.
Okay.
And this was the first of 3 collaborations between John Ford and Jimmy Stewart, which he only has a handful of films left, so they did work a lot towards the end of John Ford's career.
Friendship ended with John Wayne. Jimmy Stewart's my best friend now.
Well, John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart are both in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which I'll be doing next week.
Oh.
But Jess, what are your thoughts on Two Rode Together?
I loved what you said, that it was The Searchers, but way worse. I don't think it handled things with as much sensitivity, and I don't know, I feel like at this point John Ford has a lot more nuance in his films, like they're not so black and white, and then we got back to this, and you know, you have white guy playing Indian Comanche chief, and then black guy playing Comanche chief warlord.
Woody Strode, who had such a nuanced and interesting performance as a Buffalo Soldier in Sergeant Rutledge, comes in and just is a mindless Comanche warrior.
Yeah, he's just there to take wives and kill people. Mm-hmm. Which is sad, because like he was amazing in Sergeant Rutledge.
Yep.
And I mean, this movie, the first half just felt like slapstick, like hostage hunting, and then the last half was like a lot of really upsetting things, and I feel like it just didn't handle it with the gravity of it should have. Like, it was just like, things are happening to them, they're not really, not a lot of agency, it's just kind of like, I don't know, I wasn't a huge fan of this.
Yeah, it definitely felt very disappointing, and you could tell there was not a passion to this movie because, you know, John Ford didn't want to do it, which was pretty.
Look,
if you could tell that watching the movie, I think that's bad.
I aspire to be that level of like petty, and just I'm gonna do my job and I'm gonna hate every minute of it. Love that for him.
He did indeed do that, and. Right, this tries to tackle big serious issues in terms of captives by the Native Americans and trying to bring them back into society, and does it with no nuance, no tact, and very over the top and ridiculous.
It's very clearly like Comanche's bad, white people good. Like there's no depth to the Comanche people
like
at all.
You didn't have like Ethan Edwards and Scar representing the same thing on either side of the coin. Like, this even says a corrupt marshal, which, yeah, Jimmy Stewart's character's taken 10% of everything from the small town that he's the marshal of.
Yeah.
And, like, I always thought that Jimmy Stewart was always, like, the good guy. And
Jimmy Stewart.
there was, like, a handful of things, like Vertigo and stuff like that. Or, like, a Hitchcock stuff where he wasn't exactly a good guy. But, like...
I think he's good with that frenetic energy, but he doesn't really have it here. He's just kind of doing it.
Well, no, like, he's certainly entertaining in this. It's just he's... The character he plays is so shameless.
He's a good guy? No.
He does not feel like a good guy. And I think that's one of the big issues is that the film tries to have us buy into the fact that he's good by the end. And I didn't buy it. And, like, his whole relationship with Elena, played by Linda Cristal, who I think she was really good as this young
She's the only one.
Mexican woman who was taken into this tribe, and then she's struggling a lot, and just the way that was it Marshall
I don't even remember.
McCabe, that's it. So Jimmy Stewart's McCabe was so bullying to her. And, like, the movie's meant to make us feel like he's empowering her.
He's just, like, dragging her around, really, and then she tries to get away, and he's like, oh, surprise, I'm driving the stagecoach. And everyone's like, oh, we're so happy.
I didn't buy it. And I didn't really buy into that. And then you have Richard Widmark, who I think was fine. Like, he wasn't particularly interesting or charismatic as this soldier who is the other of the two rode together.
He just picked up a woman, too. You could just grab any woman near you. And
like, I do feel like at least him and Marty, played by Shirley Jones, spent time with each other.
Yeah.
And felt like... I feel like the relationship between McCabe and Elena was creepy.
Yeah, he just kind of whisked her away, and he's like, I guess you're mine now.
And he was, like, slowly putting the moves on her, like, being like, how about you come sit over here and let me put my arm around you. And it's just like...
Why did he bring her to that dance, too? Like, she clearly didn't want to be there.
No,
and no one else wanted her there either, which was really rude. I guess it was to highlight how hard it is to reassimilate, but he just kind of, like, drags her in there, and then she...
And then bullies her into, like, confronting everybody. And then he cuts her off. And then he winds up swooping in and being like, I'm going to tell you all how terrible you are.
He's like, yeah, tell him your deep, traumatic story about your life with the Comanche people.
Shirley Jones is a very charismatic actor. And I think she does a fine job. But, like, she's, like, paired up with Widmark, who's not very interesting on screen. And, like, their dynamic is underdeveloped. Like, even if it's more developed than the other one, it's still...
It's not great.
Underdeveloped and not particularly interesting. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of, like, dynamic filmmaking here, and I feel like it's probably because John Ford didn't want to make this movie. And the way that this escalates, like you pointed out in its third act, is concerning, because it goes from, yes, let's make fat jokes all the time about...
Over here, Slim.
Trying to figure out which actor was this. Yeah, Andy Devine, who was in Stagecoach, who has a very specific voice, is large. He is an obese man. And they just keep making fat jokes. And then he comes in and takes out both Harry Carey Jr. and Ken Curtis by belly flopping them. And there's even the boom sound effect that they put in, like a drum sound. And I'm just like, what is this? And then it gets into a lynching and a murder. And it's supposed to be visceral and impactful, but...
It's like 2 total minutes they devote to this.
It's just... The escalation I didn't really buy into, and is this still better than a lot of John Ford's earlier stuff and stuff like that? Yeah, but, like, this just feels like a hollowed out version of his best work. And there's a lot of other films that I've watched of his, which I've watched 75 at this point. It's just, this has a really strong, a mostly strong cast of actors. And it has a lot of potential, except it's just handled in such a flubbing kind of way, to the point where there's too many storylines going on, there's too many threads. This film did not need to be an hour and 49 minutes, and it felt it. It felt longer. I do feel like John Ford's sweet spot was 90 to 100 minutes, which most of his films are. Now we're getting in the later career where almost all of these are 2 hours, and I'm just like, maybe he forgot how to edit, forgot how to...
Maybe he just didn't care. He's like, we don't edit it, it's fine.
Like we said at the beginning, this is a much, much worse version of The Searchers that handles challenging themes and topics with very little tact. And this is such a complex issue to portray in film accurately of, like, were people kidnapped by Native Americans and forced to assimilate into their tribes? How do you handle that accurately and also with respect and not just...
World?
It's...
News of the World was pretty good.
It's just such a frustrating thing at this point, and maybe I'm getting a little weary towards the end of my journey here, but...
I think John Ford was too.
This was certainly not one that I enjoyed very much. But Jess, do you have any other thoughts on Two Rode Together?
No.
Well, those are all of our thoughts on Two Rode Together. So let's dive into some recommendations. So Jess, why would you like to recommend Memoir of a Snail?
Well, it's presumptuous, Shane. I'm just kidding. He coaches me. No, not coaches. He prepares me.
That sounds really bad,
It does.
Jess.
That's not what I meant. He gives me a heads up because I have a lot of anxiety.
I literally ask everybody beforehand what they're going to recommend and what their coming attraction is, so I have it in my notes.
Okay, well, it feels comforting to me.
Please talk about Memoir of a Snail.
I loved it. It was great. If you liked Max and Mary and Max, you'll like this too, probably. I think I told Shane it's very French because it's very, here's how life is. It's crushingly depressing at points. But I really enjoyed it a lot. I'm trying not to spoil anything.
I'm a big fan of Adam Elliott and what he did with Mary and Max, and now what he did with Memoir of a Snail. He has such a unique visual language. The design of the characters are grotesque and weird and uncomfortable.
Dirty and gross.
And like the world around us.
Yeah, it's grimy.
And we live in a grimy world, and he's not afraid to show it. And Sarah Snook of Succession fame did a fantastic job in this film.
Take your kids. It's animated. Please don't take your kids to this.
This is a stop-motion claymation film that is not for kids.
No.
It deals with a lot of taboo things and challenging themes in a direct and impactful way. So certainly one that I would also recommend. Now, one new film that I would like to recommend is Look Back, which is a new anime from Kiyotaka Oshiyama. And this film focuses on two young women who wind up developing a friendship over their love of manga. And what started as a tumultuous connection that was very forced, literally, because one of them was forced to hang out with the other one. It winds up showing a lot about friendship. It shows a lot about artistry and collaboration, and also tragic, and how you deal with loss, and in a very shocking way. And all of this is done in 58 minutes.
Yeah, it moves.
This movie is literally 58 minutes.
It moves fast.
And it is gorgeous. It has that like anime music feel. All of it. It is a total package in a package much smaller than most feature films.
Similar to Memoirs of a Snail, really, with those themes.
Next up, one from my watch list is A Woman in Paris, a drama of fate.
That's a lot of
Yes. A.
A-O.
And this is a film directed by Charlie Chaplin from 1923, not starring Charlie Chaplin. It was a drama focusing on a young woman whose planned escape from her small town life in France with the love of her life takes a tragic turn, and she winds up going to Paris, becoming the how should I say, she's like the arm candy of a really rich man until her true love comes back into her life. And tragedy strikes. This film does not pull punches. And this is a really impressively put together, like, Charlie Chaplin was an incredibly talented filmmaker and composer and really knew how to put a film together. And this does the drama so impactfully, like all of his comedy would do the comedy. So this was a really effective film and an impactful film. And one that was very unexpected. It even had a warning at the beginning written by Charlie Chaplin, like, I am not in this movie. So
but for him, people were probably waiting.
Yep. And the last one of our movies that we rewatched was Lost in America from Albert Brooks, who him and his wife, after he doesn't get the promotion that he expects, take their nest egg out onto the road and are going to live their best life out in the western United States.
Van life before van life was a thing.
The Winnebago life, except something happens to their nest egg.
Oh my god.
And the Julie Haggerty and Albert Brooks are so great. Albert Brooks is so damn funny. This is like the whitest movie you'll ever watch.
Oh,
but
God.
It's so unabashedly so connected to his sense of humor and his outlook on life. And this going right at like capitalism, commercialism, Reaganomics, and stuff like that. And what people think they could just, whisk away their lives and then live dangerously.
They're going to shirk the whole system like Easy Rider. I'm like, do they not remember that they die at the end of Easy Rider?
We're going to do this like Easy Rider.
I mean, it gets them out of a ticket, so...
This movie's wild and hilarious. And if you haven't seen any Albert Brooks movies, you should check them out. For sure.
They definitely would have committed him. In the opening scene, he's pretty... Yeah.
He's pretty unhinged.
They definitely would have taken him away.
But this is the man that Carl Reiner said was the funniest person he ever met when he was 16. Oh. So, because Rob Reiner and Albert Brooks were friends. And fun fact, Albert Brooks' real name is Albert Einstein.
I see why he changed it.
So, but that is another episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. And not to jinx it, this is Jess's last episode for John Ford. Hopefully everybody else pulls through on the other 5 episodes as we wrap up and Jess doesn't have to do another one of these. But Jess, thank you so much for committing to this ride with me.
You're welcome.
And thank all of you for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.